Hi, welcome everyone to Aplusify's webinar today. Our topic today is customizing core permissions in Nimble AMS. Before we get started, just a few things that I want to cover with you. Today's webinar will be recorded, so we ask that if you have any questions or want to share some information, we love hearing from you. So definitely put that here in the chat box that you have in the Zoom profile, and we'll get to your questions as we can. Don't worry, I know sometimes it takes a while to come up with some of those questions. We will definitely save some time at the end for Q&A, but don't be shy, definitely pipe in when you need to. We'll try to get to you when we can. This webinar will be recorded and we will share the recording with you afterwards, along with some notes and some tips that may help you along the way. Again, this webinar series is provided by Aplusify, a Salesforce managed service company that specializes in associations and nonprofits here in the US. So we're proud to be able to share the information that we've learned along the way, and we keep sharing with our clients and also potentially our future clients. But today, let me start off with welcoming Neeraj Garg. He's our Chief Operating Officer. He's actually in charge of not only our company, but also working with our developers in creating an internal task force that focuses on actually Nimble solutions. And what that task force does is they keep up to date with all the latest and greatest things that's happening in the Nimble community, as well as sharing lessons learned, best practices that we've learned with our Nimble clients. So today, we're very happy to have him to be able to share some information about core permissions. Welcome, Neeraj. I'm glad you could join us today. Would love for you to be able to share your screen and get us kicked off here. Can you tell us a little bit about what core permissions are?
Sure. Thank you, Vinu, for the introduction. And I think today's webinar is more about setting core permissions in Nimble AMS. And I think as we go through these slides, we will understand what these core permissions are and how they are actually very helpful in maintaining our security, organization-wide security, as well as field-level security. So let's get moving. And I think the first few slides would actually help you understand what core permissions are and how they can actually help you out. And then in further slides, we will tell you how you can actually easily set some core permissions and what some of the permissions that are actually provided by Nimble AMS. So let's get started. So as I was saying that when you are using Salesforce or AMS or maybe any other system, what you are doing is storing data in your system. So the data can be any sensitive information about your members, your employees, all right, which obviously your employees and members think is secure. Now, there are different ways to secure data. And one of the ways is to have a set of permissions, because the data that you have is actually so much that you don't want to give access to it to every department, right? So in your org, you will have different departments, like you may have a marketing department, you may have a sales department, you may have a customer servicing department, you may have a finance department. Now, the data that is present and underlying in the system, the finance team should have access to finance data, right? Your sales team would have access to some of the sales leads or contacts. Your marketing team may want some information on the marketing initiatives or some leads. So to segregate that, you need different roles. So your roles can be a marketing manager role, a marketing executive role, a customer executive role, right? And a different set of permissions that you give to them so that you can have control over the data, right? You don't want to give data access to everyone. So your admins may have access to control everything that is present in the system. He can view the data, he can edit the data. So if you can see here in this, right, you have different roles in your organization. So you can have a role of a system administrator who can do everything, who can view, modify all data, who can customize the data, who can create the data. Then you have a standard user who will have access to view the data, edit and delete of the records that he has access to, right? And on top of that, you can have a marketing user who would be a standard user, but he will have access to the leads as well. He should be able to import leads. Then you have a contact manager who can have standard user access, plus he should be able to manage all the accounts. And then you have read-only access to maybe some members who can just read the data and not do any edit or delete on that. So we have standard roles and permissions that Salesforce and AMS provides. And then we can actually have a set of permissions defined on that role so that we restrict access to different roles. So marketing team has different access. And what it does is it actually helps you to protect data because everyone does not have access to your data. You can prevent phishing attacks with it. You obviously reduce the risk of data leak because the data is not accessible by each and everyone. It is only available for access by either admins or super admins who can edit and delete it. And obviously, once you have roles, you can have an optimal system performance because it's limited data that is flowing in and out for different roles. So data security and permissions go hand in hand. And in the next few slides, we will see what these settings and permissions exactly do and how they are actually set up. So since we know that Nimble AMS is built on Salesforce, so it allows all the features that we have in Salesforce for the user profiles and configurations. And what are permission sets? So you have standard functionalities and you have to extend some permissions to those users so that they can access certain objects or certain pages. So as an example, there may be certain pages or reports which you just want to have access to maybe some of your senior management, right? You don't want to have that access to all your team members so that they cannot view that data because that is management data that should be viewed, that is only applicable for certain eyes. So you need to set those permissions that only a sales head would actually have access to that kind of pages or reports or those tabs. And for every other user, you will not have access to those reports. So if you see on the right side, we have two things. We have got something called settings and we have got something called permissions. And I think most of the times users get confused with what is settings, what are settings and what are permissions. So settings in very simple language is what the users see. So as an example, users can see certain apps, they can see certain tabs, they can view certain record types, some page layouts, and some fields, right? So it is very specific to what users can see. And what are permissions? Permissions are things that users can do on the org. So maybe a user can run a report or he can do a mass email. So your marketing team may have access to customize the emails, customize the email templates, but maybe your sales team does not have access to that, right? So marketing team can run reports, do mass emailing, but a different team cannot. Similarly, your sales team may create leads while a normal finance team may not. A finance team may have access to the salaries of the employees. They can edit that. Maybe a finance manager can delete that as well. But a normal team would not have permissions to do that. So settings is what you have access to, and permissions is what with that access, what all you can do in your systems. So generally, every user can have a profile, but he can have multiple permission sets. So the profiles would be limited to either a marketing manager, marketing executive, a sales manager, a sales executive. But different sales manager may have different permission sets so that they can do different things as required, right? So maybe the next slide, we can take an example. So imagine a sales organization in which users have access to view, create, and edit the records of a product object. So everyone in the sales team or a sales manager can view, create, and edit the records. But for a product, we want a user to give an option to delete the products that are no longer used. Now, there are three options to do that, right? Either we change the entire profile for the sales team and we add a delete access as well, which will actually give delete access to each and everyone in the sales team, right? Which is not correct, right? We want to give access to certain sales team members who can actually delete the product. Second option is that we create a new profile which actually gives a create delete access to the user for deleting the records, which is basically creating a burden on the system and creating a new profile for everything that we want to do. The third and the most apt thing would be we keep the profile same, we don't create a new profile, and we provide certain permission sets. So we say that we create a permission set with a delete access and provide it to a certain user. So if you see on the top part of it, right, we have a profile which has a create and read permission. So imagine a role which has access to create and read, right? So a user can create and read it. Now we create two permission sets, right? We say permission set 1, which allows access to read and edit, and a permission set 2, which provides access to read, edit, and delete. Okay, so if we provide a profile with a permission set 1 and a permission set 2, he can actually create, read, edit, and delete without changing the profile, right? And if we provide profile with just permission set 1, what will happen is it will have permission to create, read, and edit. Okay. If we create a profile with a permission set, just permission set 2, it will have access to create, read, edit, and delete. Right. So what permission sets are doing is it is actually helping you to provide certain permission sets to a same profile user. So a marketing manager of one profile may have different permission sets, and a marketing manager 2 may have a different permission set. So marketing manager 1 may have just permission set 1. Marketing manager 2 may have just permission set 2. A marketing manager 3 may have permission set 1 and permission set 2. So though the roles are the same or the profiles are the same, but with different permission sets, we have given them access to do different things, right? So what a user can do is equal to his profile plus, so a user can do is equal to the standard profile functionality, which is this, the standard profile functionality, plus the access given through the permission sets, which is permission set 1 and permission set 2, right? So this is what happens when you create permission sets, because it keeps the system clean. You can assign different permission sets to different profile and give access to user for whatever he wants. So permission set is a collection of permissions or configurations that enables the users to access specific things in Salesforce or AMS that are not a part of standard user functionality. So the standard user functionality is this profile, and these permission sets are created, which extends the profile functionality. So in the last slide, if you see, we said that user can have only one profile, but multiple permission sets. And this is what we meant. He can have one profile, but he can have multiple permission sets so that he can have different accesses to access the system. Now, what does permission set? So let's take an example, right? We have a permission set, which is called account merge, if you see in this, all right? What it does is it allows users to merge duplicate accounts into one record, right? So you can go to permission sets and you can find different permission sets here. So what this permission set does is, if you assign this specific permission to a user, he would be able to merge duplicate accounts into one record, right? That is what this permission does, right? And if you can see in the screen, there are multiple permissions which have multiple descriptions, right? So you can have different permission sets which you can assign to different users to do different things. So why do we need permission sets? Because it allows your organization to access its data, because different levels will have different access levels and they will require different access permissions to access the data they want. It enables admins to customize and restrict access, because they can restrict access to users by deleting the permission sets from the user role. So if a user does not require a delete functionality anymore, what the admin will do is he will just cut off the delete access, remove that permission set, and cut back that role, right? So it provides that kind of control to the admin so that they can have restricted access of data. And what it does to the members and employees is that they should be able to edit the data they need access to depending on their roles. So that is why we need these permission sets. Now, there are different level of permission sets you can have. You can have object level permissions, which are basically the permissions given at the table level, right? So object means a table. And then you have field permissions, which actually refer to the actual record field on which you can give the permission to. So now if you see in this screen, right, let's wait to see what is happening. So yeah, so here what you have is you have object permissions, which is read, create, edit, delete, view all, modify all, right? And you can actually check. So what we have done is done a delete access, and on the current membership end date, which is a field permission, we have given edit access, right? So that is how you can actually give permissions on the object and the field permissions. And then you can see there are certain gray fields, right? Like these ones, which are grayed out. These are the permissions which you cannot edit because your admin has not given you the right to edit it or provide access to it, right? So this is how you can actually create permissions on the object level and on the field level, right? So as you can see, we have read, create, edit, delete, view all, and modify all in the object permissions stuff. And in the field permissions, we have two things, read access and edit access, which means that read access means you can read the records in that field, and the edit access means you can be able to edit those records in that field. Similarly with the object permissions. And these all configurations are available in NMS, which you can easily do, or you can ask your admin to do it. Now let's see how we can actually create permission sets that we were talking about. So you go to the permission sets. So the step one is you go to the permission sets, and there is a button called new there, right? So what we are doing here is so our use case is that we are trying to provide edit access to admins for customizing the confirmation email. So right, so that a request comes from the marketing team that I want a permission where my users should be able to customize the confirmation email that is received or that is sent to the members. Right? Now, so what we are trying to do is create a new permission sets, which gives the edit access for customizing the confirmation mail. So what we have done as a step one is we have gone to the permission sets. Because this permission is new, it's not already present, we have to create a new permission set. So we do new. As soon as we do new, right, there is a box. There are two. This is the screen which we get. So we have to add the label and description of what permission set we are trying to achieve. So since we are trying to give edit access for customizing the confirmation email, So we mention the label as confirmation email and the API name as confirmation email. And we provide the description as provide access to admins for customizing confirmation emails sent to members. Once we have done that, what we will have to do is we have to go to object settings, right? So we have to select an object, right, on which we have to give the permissions, right? So we click on the object setting option. And since we have to give the edit access on the confirmation email, we choose the events object from the list, because this particular permission is related for the events, right? So we choose the event objects from the list of objects. So we selected an object and we chose the events object from the list of objects. Now, what was the use case? That we had to give edit access to the admins for confirmation email. So if you see, we check the edit boxes for confirmation email banner, confirmation email footer, confirmation email header, and the confirmation email webinar link, right? Initially, it was just the read access. Now we are given the edit access. So we check the boxes against the fields for which we want to enable the edit permission. This is the read one. This is the edit one. So we have checked all the boxes for the confirmation email records, right? Since we have done this, we need to save this permission, right? And then we have got the permission set created now. Now what we have to do is we have to assign this permission to a specific set of users who can actually go and edit the access on the confirmation emails. So we will have to go and click on the manage assignments to assign the permissions to a specific user group of users, right? Because whenever we create a permission, it is not for everyone, it is for a specific group that we are targeting. Here in this case, we are targeting the marketing team. So it would be someone for the marketing team who can actually go and edit the access for the confirmation emails. So we go to manage assignments and we select an admin. So you will get a list of the people who have admin access, and then you give that access to the person whom you want to give that permission and hit the assign button. All right. So what has happened is you have actually created a permission set and assigned it to a user. And now this user whom we have checked in, Yogen Singh, should be able to edit the confirmation email stuff. And so no other user should be able to do it. It would be just this user who has been given this permission set. And so his role is admin, but he has been given this permission set, which sets him apart and gives him that permission set. So that is how you create permission sets and assign it to the users for their access. Now, these are some of the permissions that are actually present in Nimble AMS. But what Nimble AMS also does is give you access to some custom permissions, right? Which has actually a feature of the Winter 20 release, right? So with Winter 20 release onwards, Nimble offers some unmanaged core permission sets that users can configure in their Salesforce instance, right? So as you can see on the screen, we have custom permissions. And here you have got two custom permissions. One is manage membership and one is one payment, right? So these custom permissions are actually not given as a standard functionality, and we have to request the Nimble AMS team to get these permissions set up, right? And every custom permission, if you see, comes with a namespace prefix as NU, right? This means that it's a custom permission that you have asked the Nimble AMS team to set it up. So organizations can utilize these permission sets for memberships, orders, events, and accountings to enhance their member experience, right? So one of the very common custom permissions that our clients generally ask for is cancel membership midterm, right? Because there are certain members who want to cancel their membership before the completion of their tenure. But this is not possible if you don't have that custom permission already built in. So what happens? So what you have to do is you will have to ask the Nimble team to give you this permission, cancel membership midterm, and then you will have to assign this membership to a particular user who can do that, right? So if you go to manage membership, you can see gives user access to the cancel midterm membership feature, right? And as if you give access to that user, if you give access to of this permission set to a particular user, right, he can actually cancel the membership in the midterm. So he will get this type of screen where he can actually go and click this cancel membership button so that membership is canceled in the midterm, right? So this is one of the custom permissions that Nimble provides. That I'm showing you on the screen. There are many more which Nimble provides, and we can talk about that in the next slide. So these are some of the other custom permissions that Nimble AMS offers. You can apply a single payment to multiple orders by selecting all orders with outstanding balance, right? So this is one of a great feature if you can get the permission for it. It saves you time because you can apply a single payment by selecting multiple orders, and you can just clear out the outstanding balance instead of just selecting each and every order then clearing its balance. So very good custom permission. If you are not aware of it, you can always ask Nimble to provide you this permission. Then there is a custom permission which actually helps you in charging cancellation fee from a specific type of registrants. So you may differentiate your registrants. You may say that for set A of my registrants or for my members, I will not charge any cancellation fee if they cancel. But for some new members or for these type of registrations, I want to charge a cancellation fee, right? So this is not provided as a in out-of-the-box feature from Nimble AMS. This is something that you have to request Nimble to set this permission, and then you can assign it to specific user. Then there is a permission which actually allows your members to select their preferred currencies, because you may have members globally who may have joined your association or nonprofit, and they want to make their payment in their preferred currency. So someone in Europe may want to do the payments in euro, someone in the UK may want to do it in pounds. So what this feature does is it allows the members to select their preferred currency. So very, very demanding feature, and a lot of clients prefer it. Then fourth is setting up the order confirmation email template when a user places an order, right? So you can, like we did for the confirmation email permission set, where an admin can actually change the confirmation email. It's very similar to that. So you can set up the email template whenever the user places an order. So you can set up your own email template for that. Then configuring donation option linked with membership, right? To show members while joining, or so you can have a donation option which is linked with their membership, which is actually shown to the members while they are joining or renewal. So you will have a donation button click where you can actually check it. So this is a very handy feature that comes in place with these custom permissions. So there are many more custom permissions like this. These are the top 6 which we think are very helpful in setting up your permission sets and everything. And you have to make sure that once we actually have these custom permissions set up from the Nimble team, we should make sure that we assign it to a very, very specific user set, right? We don't give this permission set to everyone. We only give it to the people whom we think are capable enough to use it. And once I think they are done with their task, we should remove that permission set from them instead of just keeping this permission set forever, right? Because roles of people change, and with roles, obviously permission sets should also change, because that is very important for security, because it may be that a employee leaves your organization, so you should make sure that you get rid of his obviously stuff that is there, and you get rid of his permission set, so that whenever a new user joins the same role, he does not have the same permission sets that he has. So those were things about permissions, customizing permissions, and how they actually help you in your data security. But for data security best practices, there are certain other things that you should take care of. And these are very simple things that you can do or ask your admins to do it, because they will help you in securing your data. Always have a multi-factor authentication, at least two-factor authentication, so that you can avoid two phishing attacks. When I say two-factor authentication, I mean that you should have a mobile app installed for the users, so that they are able to click that link on their mobile. And so there is a second factor of authentication apart from the first user ID and password. It's more or like a one-time password that comes on your banking site when you log in with a user ID and password. So always have a second layer of authentication. Always limit your session timeout sessions. So I think it should never be that you don't have a timeout set, so that if you don't have a session timeout set for your users can log in one time and they will keep on, their session will keep on going, right? It may be that a second person comes and he keeps on accessing that data, right, which he's not authorized to, right? So always make sure that you have a session timeout. It can be 30 minutes, it can be 1 hour, whatever does not annoy your users. So keep a threshold on that. Always make sure that you have a list of IPs that you don't want your other systems to have access to, because otherwise what will happen is people from different domains and worldwide IPs would actually log into your systems, do different kinds of illegal activities which you don't want to do. So always keep and that is actually the task of a security team who has actually set up the firewall or anything on your system. They can actually do that. Always have a session expiry, which we talked about, have a timeout on the session, so that users have to re-log in when the timeout happens, right? This is very, very important, because if that is there, it actually reduces your data risk. Users should be trained that they don't share their passwords or their permission sets with their team members or juniors to them, right? So a marketing manager may have a different permission set, a sales manager may have a different permission set for his role. And if that access or is shared with a team member, right, he may have access to certain type of data which he should not have. And then I think if that is there, it's very difficult to maintain data security. And then you can have a transport layer security, which is actually provided by Salesforce, where you can actually encrypt your data by having different security protocols and different transport layer security added to it. So apart from these sessions permissions, you can have all these factors as well, which are very simple to do, which is not a very big task. You can ask your sysadmin team or the security team or any consultant who is working with you to take care of these things, because these are data security best practices that you have to follow.
Thank you, Nitish. And I just want to remind everyone, if you have any questions or want to share any information, you can do that in the chat box or in Q&A. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that they could, they definitely could ask questions that they need. So Nitish, I do have a couple of questions for you. I think this is really interesting. You know, I think a lot of times we don't think of permissions, getting access to your systems connected with security. So it was really great to see what the direct impact can be if you don't set those permissions correctly. How often do you see people, when we work with clients and we're asked to look at this, I'm sure you've seen cases where people have given their their login to someone else. Is that something that you see a lot of? And can you talk a little bit about why that may not be such a great idea?
Yeah, sure. I think we have seen that a lot where people share their passwords and logins with someone else. And that is what I was telling in the last slide. So imagine a situation where you are the marketing manager and you have access to certain data which you can edit, right? And maybe you can delete that as well. So maybe you can have access to delete certain kind of products which you can, right? And if you give that access to someone in your team, so what is happening then is he will use your login ID and password, and he can actually delete the products which you don't want to, right? And you have no way to find out who has done that because he has logged in with your user ID and password, right? So it's all you, right, who has done this job, and then it may have catastrophic impacts if you share information like this, because your data gets deleted. Or what he may do is, if he has wrong intentions, he may actually edit some of the records, or maybe he may have access to certain data which he should not be allowed to, and he just copies the data somewhere and uses it, which will actually lead to data compliances for your members, or he may leak that data somewhere. So there are n number of scenarios where things can be compromised if you share your user ID and login and password with everyone.
Yeah, and I wanted to share another example as well. It's great to hear from a very technical standpoint and security standpoint as to why that's important. But I know on our member services side of the house, where we provide help desk services for members, a lot of times when we onboard a new association client, the question is asked, well, do you really need to have a unique, different username account for each help desk agent? And we always say yes. And that not only is not only from a security standpoint, which is really important, but also to be able to track, have that visibility and track and see who's making what changes to member records. For example, it could be as simple as a member calls in, wants to pay for their invoice, but they were having trouble to do it online. So they called in to our help desk agent. And that agent is going to then update their record. When the agent has their own username and their own permissions set up so that they can do that, then we have visibility in knowing what information was exactly changed. So if a member ever calls back going, well, I don't remember changing my information, you have that exact record in the data history for that record, which is great. Just to be able to know who did what when. And I think that brings a lot of visibility into it. Nitish, when we first take on a project where we are working with core permissions, what is a good way? Do you have a template of, maybe the C-suite needs a certain type of permission, or perhaps membership has a certain type? Do you kind of have a template that you go by to make recommendations on who should get what kind of permissions? Or is it really, is it different case by case?
It's actually a mix of both. So what we generally do is, if we have got access to an org and if we've got admin rights to it, what we do is we actually create a map of user roles and permissions by going at the backend and see like what roles and permissions are given to different users and what are the different permission sets present, and what are the roles that those permission sets have been given to. And generally what we do is we generally present that kind of information to our clients to just validate that. Because most of the times what happens is that when the permission sets and roles are created, people create them for one time and then they assign that permission set to one role. But then they forget about it, that that permission set duration has been completed and that permission set has to be removed for that certain role because he doesn't require it anymore, right? So that kind of audit and that kind of monitoring is generally not done by any organization. And what happens is that it actually creates way for certain security threats because you have given extra permission sets to a role which he does not require at that point of time, and you have forgotten about it. And then obviously he can do anything with your system. So it's always good to share that information with someone who is authorized and who knows what permission sets or what role should be given to certain users. And we should keep on monitoring it and editing it depending on, because there may be people who may be coming in your organization, there may be people who may be leaving your organization. So I think we should monitor it maybe monthly or bi-monthly whenever you want to. But it's always good to create that kind of map and share it with your client so that he exactly knows which permission sets are aligned with which of the members or which of their staff, so that it can be edited periodically to keep your data safe.
And do you ever recommend doing, let's say somebody new joins the organization and their permissions should be very different than anything else. Do you recommend doing like a one-off permission set for that one individual?
Yeah, so sometimes there may be a case where a specific user wants a specific permission set, right? So suppose, like I was giving you an example where in a sales team, there is a need that we need to delete the products for a particular product line. Now, since we don't have that permission set, we actually create that permission set once off and assign it to that particular user whom our client suggests, and give that permission set to that user. But we make sure that we give that permission set for a particular duration of time as agreed with the client. And once the job is done, I think we remove that. But yes, we do give one-off permission sets to the users based on case-to-case basis.
Now, these permission sets seem they seem rather easy to set up and do by oneself. So if you're a smaller staff association and don't really have the budget to bring on someone that can look at this in more depth and really has really simple core permissions, is this fairly a simple task to do by themselves?
Yeah, so obviously, if, like I told you, you have 7 or 8 steps that you can do to actually create a permission set. And anyone who has that knowledge can do it. But if you don't have that skill set, I would not recommend people doing it, because if the permission sets are defined wrong and they're assigned to wrong users, it may have a bad impact on everything, because then you are playing with your security. So if you have got that idea, obviously go and do it. But if you don't have it, I think it's always good to consult someone who is an expert on that, and you can actually help you guide on simple steps to do it.
Yeah, I think this will go a long way in helping create some of those governance and security documentation that associations are now trying to build within their organizations. I know that's a big push in the industry right now. Now that we have the technology, we need to document how we're keeping our member data safe and also our users as well. So Nitish, I don't see any more questions coming in. Before we leave, is there any words of wisdom that you would like to leave us today with?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing that we should make sure is that we continuously monitor our systems in terms of security. Now, as I told you, security has many steps, and permissions and roles come as a part and parcel of that, which I think a lot of people miss because they think they are not important and everyone can have access to anything. So it's important that we set our roles and permissions, and we deploy a kind of monitoring team or a security team who is an expert on that and can guide us on what new permission sets are present. Like I told you, for Nimble, they have got a lot of custom permissions that came with Winter 20 release, right? But there must be someone who is going to tell you that these are the kind of custom permissions that you have got, and you can actually use cancel membership and assign it to users, which will ease your task. So always talk to experts, and if you don't have, look for external help who can guide you in all this process.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Nitish, for joining us today. And thank you all for joining us. We know you have a lot of webinars to choose out there in the virtual world, but we're so happy that you could join us today. We have at Aplusify do host these educational webinars once a month, sometimes even more. So make sure you check out our website, aplusify.com/webinars. Definitely join us for some future ones. If you have any questions or thoughts after this webinar, which I know I always have afterwards, definitely reach out to us. You can reach us at wecare@aplusify.com. We're happy to address your questions or even sit down with you to help you with any of your other Nimble needs as well. Again, thank you, everyone. We'll make sure you get a copy of this recording and slides, and enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks for joining us.